Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ms. McGuire video lectures. And today we are covering the tissue level of organization. So let's go ahead and begin. So we have four major types of tissues that make up human body. So it's good, only four, right? Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And then we have lots of subtypes, right? We have several types of epithelial, many types of connective, right? So even we have four major tissue types. Unfortunately, you need to memorize way more than just four different tissues. And then on this slide, you can see that your organs, I want to remind you that organ is anatomical structure that is made from more than one tissue type, right? So, but here it shows you some of your organs that are primarily made from this different type of tissue. Like you have your skeletal muscles, that's a muscle tissue. You have your cardiac muscles, muscle tissue again, right? You have part of your, for example, well, not part, but let's take, if we take your gastrointestinal tract, your GI tract, or we can take your urinary bladder, and actually we can pretty much take any hollow organ inside your body cavities, and within the walls of those hollow organs, you will find smooth muscles, right? Now, if you look at your skin is an organ, but your upper part of the skin, epidermis, it's made of epithelial tissue. Your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, the primary tissue over there is nervous tissue. If you look at your bones, for example, that will be connective tissue. Cartilage is connective tissue. Then your blood, right, that's connective tissue. Adipose, fat, a different type of connective tissue. So if you, for example, if you take any organ, like you take a liver, again, remember, it's not going to be just one tissue type, but the primary tissues that make your liver, it will be epithelial tissue. It will be glandular epithelium, right? But you see what I mean. So your organs have, they made primary of one of these tissues, and what makes them organ, you start throwing pieces of other tissues together, right? Okay, so now on this slide, we look at the embryonic origin of tissues, and pretty much we all start with what, one cell, like a zygote, and so it's an ovum or egg fertilized by sperm, and that one per cell will divide several times, and this first cell will give rise to all the cells of your body. And that means that cell is not only capable of division, right? Those first cells, they're capable of differentiation. So they can differentiate into different cells and tissues. So cells that can differentiate into all type of cells of your body are called totipotent cells, right? So now imagine you have this first zygote, and it divides and divides, and we have, like, 2 cells, 8 cells, 16, 32 cells, and then you have good number of cells that they start organizing themselves into layers. And when cells organize themselves into layers, we call those layers our primary germ layers. And during human development, we have 3 primary germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And if you look at this diagram, it will tell you that ectoderm then will differentiate, or your organs that will be developed from ectoderm will be your upper part of your skin, right? Like your epidermis, your nervous system, some of the gland like pituitary, adrenal gland. Your mesoderm will give rise to your connective tissue, bone, cartilage, blood, endothelium of blood vessels, muscles, right? So kidneys. So that's going to be mesoderm. So connective tissue will develop from mesoderm. Then endoderm will give rise to your digestive system, with some exception, some digestive glands, endocrine glands, adrenal cortex, right? So these three primary germ layers will be developed into all the tissues of the embryo and adult, right? So now tissue also form membranes. And what is a membrane? Because the membrane is, with exception of synovial membrane, because synovial membrane is a connective tissue membrane, the rest of your membrane are made of epithelial and connective tissue. And this is what made them as simple organs. So membrane is a thin layer of cells that covers, it can cover your entire body, like your skin does, what we call cutaneous membrane, that is actually your skin. Or those membranes can cover your internal organs. For example, a serous membrane cover your viscera in thoracic cavity and abdominopelvic cavities. Mucous membrane will cover your open body cavities, like your oral cavities, digestive GI tract, your respiratory system, your urogenital system, right? So those are different membranes that cover your body or your organs or your cavities inside your body. And again, membranes are simple organs made from epithelial and connective tissue. And we do have synovial membranes that you will find in joints, cover your joints, synovial joints that are freely movable. And this is a connective tissue membrane, right? Okay, so now we will take a look at different types of tissues and their subtypes. And we're gonna start with epithelial tissue. Here's histological slide of epithelial tissue that actually starts, like you can see where kind of like this darker line is all the way to the top, right? So that's all, all this part shown here. I hope you can see my arrow. This is epithelial tissue. So what is the general structure of epithelial tissue? It's a highly cellular. That means we have lots of cells and cells connected. There is a connection in between cells, so highly cellular. When cells are connected, we have these cell junctions. So cell junctions are connection between cells, and we have tight junctions, we have desmosomes, we have gap junctions, so different junctions between cells. Also, epithelial tissue has polarity. That means that if you're looking at epithelial tissue or epithelial cells, the top part might look different from the bottom, right? That's what polarity is. So they have a basal layer or basal surface, and it have epithelial layer or epithelial, apical surface. So apical part, like over here, this is the apical surface on the top, apical surface. And we have basal area or basal part at the base and on the top. And even on this diagram, you can see differences between cells on the basal part compared to apical part. And even cell itself can be different. Basal part and apical part can vary. For example, you might have like cilia or microvilli on the top, and you will not have them on the bottom, right? That's what polarity is. Polarity, that means when we have two poles, they might not be the same. Another interesting characteristic of epithelial tissue is that epithelial tissue is avascular. That means we do not have blood vessels and capillaries in epithelial tissue. And it also makes sense because, for example, if it's your skin and it's superficial layer of your skin, you don't want a blood vessel so close to the surface of your body, because if you have any impact, any damage, you don't want to rupture those capillaries. So you want to put your capillaries, blood vessels, deeper under your epithelial tissue, right? So it's avascular. However, it is innervated. So you will have nerve endings, but you will not have capillaries. And because of this property, because epithelial tissue is avascular, it's always on top of connective tissue. So if you see over here, this lighter layer, that's connective tissue, and connective tissue is very vascular. So that's the tissue that will supply your epithelial cells with oxygen and nutrients. And it's gonna happen by diffusion, right? So those epithelial cells, they still need oxygen, they still need nutrients. If not blood vessels, we're gonna bring them, those cells, all these molecules for their survival needs. That's gonna be a job of connective tissue. So connective tissue has capillaries, blood will bring oxygen, nutrients, and it will diffuse this into these epithelial cells. And another characteristic, epithelial tissue is has a rapid reproduction. So it's good because, again, if the function of epithelial tissue is like here, defense, so it's a covering, it's protection, right? It protects you. So if epithelial tissue get damaged, you want it to be able to heal. And for that reason, cells must divide, reproduce, and replace the cells that are damaged. Right, so that's a kind of general structure, and general function include protection, defense, transfer of materials, secretion. Right, okay. Those are not all the function, because you do have filtration, for example, is another function of epithelial tissue. Okay, so we just mentioned that epithelial tissue are highly cellular, so cells are connected, and here's a junction between cells, so it can be tight junctions, and it can be gap junctions, and what they call here anchoring junction, including desmosomes. In some books, you will just see tight junctions, desmosomes, and gap junction. But here it's kind of like better classification, because anchoring junction can include other type of connection rather than desmosomes. So tight junctions separate cells into apical and basal compartments and blocks movement of substances. So let's see. Okay, so it shows over here the tight junction between cells. So what it does, it can, so if you have two cells and they join by tight junction, it might prevent movement of materials in between cells, right? So, because if you have two cells together and there is some gap in between them, you have some movement of the fluids, right, with dissolved particles, even if this gap is really small. But if you have this tight junction, then you prevent movement of the substances in between cells. Anchoring cells, including desmosomes, hemidesmosomes, adherents, And those are proteins, like shown over here, that keep cells together, but at the same time, they allow some movement, like some stretch maybe. So you can see over here, like it's like a zipper that allow, you know, maybe a small movement. And this is needed. For example, look at your skin, right? So you want your skin to be able to stretch a little bit, so cells cannot be so if they have this desmosome that will decrease the tension in between cells, for example, when you stretch your skin a little bit. And also desmosomes can connect or anchor epithelial cells to the basement membrane, right? So it stabilizes epithelial tissue. And another type of junction is gap junctions, shown on this diagram here. And the gap junction tells you there is like a little protein channels, and they allow exchange between cells. So if you have one cell here, another cell here, you know, we want this gap junction for ions or molecules move from one cell to another cell. Okay, so now I don't know where to put my, I need to move myself around here a lot. Okay, so now let's look at classification of epithelial tissue. So you can classify epithelial tissue, or you should classify, based on two characteristics. And first is number of layers. So if you have only one layer of cells, you call it simple, right? So the first name of epithelial tissue will include the number of layers. So either it's simple if you have one layer, or stratified if you have more than one. So if you have two layers, it's already stratified. So here are the simple, stratified, simple, stratified, simple, stratified, right? We have one more. I will talk about it in a minute. The second way, criteria you use to classify epithelial tissue is a shape of those cells. So cells can be flat, and in anatomy, squamous is a name for flat, right? So it can be squamous or flat. Cells can be cuboidal or columnar, right? And when you put these two names together, you have a proper name for epithelial tissue. For example, this one is simple squamous epithelium. This one is simple cuboidal epithelium. This is simple columnar epithelium. Or if you have more than one layer, you will have stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, and stratified columnar, right? So name makes sense, right? If it's stratified cuboidal, you know it's several layers and cells are cuboidal. Right, so this is a major classification. Now, in human body, and it's important to remember, when we're talking about stratified, we mostly, stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar are very rare type of tissue, and they usually only 2 layers thick, only 2 layers of cells. When we have 50 to 150 layers of cells, it will be stratified squamous, right? So you do not expect to see in a human body stratified cuboidals that made of 20, 30 layers, right? So again, stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar, mostly 2 layers thick tissue. And stratified squamous can vary, right? So it can go to 150 layers, like epidermis of your skin. Another type of tissue is pseudostratified. And pseudostratified means when you look at it, it might look like several layers, like at least 2 or 3, But every cell is touching this purple line over here. See this purple line? This line represents basement membrane. So it's extracellular matrix, really. Basement membrane. So every single cell touching this basement membrane. So it's only one layer of cells. That's why it's called pseudo-stratified, means it's falsely stratified. It's not stratified, but it has appearance of several layers. And we will look at other slides that will make more sense, right? Just remember now these major types of epithelial tissue based on shape and number of layers. And here we go to simple squamous epithelium, right? So so on this view, you're looking from above, right? So this is, you're looking from the top, right? So here's the cells close together. This one, I don't know, it's, I don't know, because it seems like several layers, but we're talking about simple, right? So maybe it's a top view as well, but this is histological slide that really makes sense. But if you look here, you see this structure right in the middle, like a big bubble that has stuff inside. So what you need to look at the wall of this bubble. This bubble is actually called Bowman's capsule or glomerulus capsule. And, you know, we will talk about it, but, you know, I don't want to kind of tell you right away. Look at this glomerulus capsule. You see glomerulus inside, and the capsule itself is made from simple squamous. I really want you to understand. That's why I call it like a big bubble, right? So there is no way it's scientific name for this structure. So again, the scientific name for this structure is a glomerulus capsule. Right, inside is glomerulus. But just to make sure you guys get the idea, if you see this structure over here, like a big bubble, whatever inside are capillaries. But if you look at the wall, those are simple squamous epithelium that make a wall of this capsule. Now, what is next to it, another tubules, this is actually a slide from a kidney. Those are simple cuboidal cells. I just wish for some reason, let me see if I can have, okay. I don't know, I just wish somehow I can draw on this slide. And I know it should be a way to do it. Okay. It says annotate, but I don't think this is gonna highlight stuff, but I can try. Oh yeah, okay. So I can draw. You live and you learn, right? So let me try. So if I try to draw, can I? Yeah, so okay. This is a straight line, so that's not gonna work. How about this one? Yeah, so okay, so you see this is a cell and here's the nucleus inside. Oh, look, this is a cell and there is a nucleus inside. Here's another cell. There's a nucleus inside. So you see it's one layer of cell. Here's another cell. This is another cell. And whatever shown in a darker purple, those are nuclei, right? So here's, for example, another cell. So this is simple squamous. But now look at this. So you see this purple stuff? This is nucleus. So where is the cell? The cell is surrounding the nucleus like this. And like this is another cell. You see how it makes these cubes? Here's another cell. And here's the nucleus right there and right there. And here you have, so here's another cell. And remember, histology slides are not perfect, right? But you see those look like cubes. So this is simple cuboidal and this look like simple squamous. That makes sense? Okay, now see if I can get my stuff back, maybe turn it off. Okay. Anyway, so I will do some drawings for you guys to help you help you understand better this stuff. Oh, by the way, let's see if I can have maybe some highlighter or something, or spotlight. Mouse select text. See, what is the spotlight? Let me try. No, that's just pretty much another drawing tool. Okay, but I promise I will get better. So you watched my other videos, maybe I will like professional drawing everything over here for you. But let's go back to our PowerPoint. So simple squamous epithelium, appearance of the thin scales, nuclei are flat, horizontal and elliptical, and it includes endothelium and mesothelium, and of course epithelium. So endothelium means you're somewhere inside, right? So it lines vessels or cardiovascular and lymphatic system, and it's very thin and it allows passage of materials. Mesothelium covers the surface of the serous membrane, and it's smooth and protective surface. And of course, epithelium, that is your epithelium of your skin, but this is not squamous, right? That's gonna be stratified. So when we're talking about one layer of flat cells, we're talking about endothelium covering your blood vessels inside, and mesothelium, the surface layer of serous membrane. Okay, well now, interesting, for some reason, now I cannot go to next slide, so I need to stop sharing for a minute. Sorry for that. Then I need to go back to my slide and try, yeah. Okay. And now I need to share with you again, guys. Sorry for that. Sorry for that. And it's not like it's my first video, but this technology are not easy for me. Okay, so simple cuboidal epithelium. You guys can see over here that those are cuboidal cells. Very nice. So this is a tube over here made of simple cuboidal. And this purple stuff are nuclei. Surrounding epithelial tissue is always connective tissue. And this is a cartoon version. So you see the cube-shaped cells and one layer of them. So it's box-like shape. Nucleus is round. Function in secretion and absorption. And one of their location, for example, is a lining of kidney tubules and making ducts of glands. Another epithelium is a simple columnar. And on this picture, you can see now cells are getting taller, right? But it's still one layer. And if you look at the cartoon picture, you see these columns of cells in one layer. So they tall like column, nucleus located in the basal end. So it's kind of like here, it's in the middle, but it should be a little bit lower because this is the basal end. And function is absorption, secretion, and you would find it lining your digestive system, female reproductive tract, Some of these simple columnar epithelium is ciliated, so it has hair-like projections on the top, and cilia is for movement of materials. Some might have microvilli, and microvilli are for absorption. Here we're looking at pseudo-stratified columnar. So it's still simple, but it has appearance of stratified. So if you look at this histology slide, that's a perfect slide. So you see this line over here, that's a basement membrane. So we go from this basement membrane to the top, it seems like, okay, I see 1, 2, 3 layers at least, right? Or if you look at this histological slide, so again, this is the basement membrane, and then you start seeing nucleus here, look here, 1, 2, 3, look like 3 layers, right? But it's not, it's just the appearance of this epithelium, because if you look here, you see how some cells are shorter, some cells are taller, and it seems like you have 3 layers here, but it's only 1 because every single cell touching basement membrane. So it's a single layer of irregular shaped cells. Nuclei are at different levels. And that's what gives you this appearance of many layers. But all the cells are in contact with basal lamina. Not all of them, however, reach apical surface. Like this one, you see, it's not reaching this apical surface, but it's still connected to basal lamina or basement membrane. Basal lamina is a part of basement membrane. And you will find it in the respiratory tract, and it will be pseudostratified columnar ciliated. And another characteristic of this epithelium are goblet cells. And so you see where we have the stars, those are goblet cells, and function of goblet cells to produce mucin, and then mucin became mucus. So you make mucus, and that's the job of your goblet cells. Okay, so quick recap. So we are in an epithelial tissue, right? So we over here, epithelial tissue. And we said that epithelial tissue can be simple or stratified. And we cover briefly simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and pseudostratified. It's actually also simple epithelium because of 1 layer of cells. And now we're going to talk about stratified, right? So where did we stop? Yeah, so we stopped right here, stratified. And the first epithelium is stratified squamous. So this is the most common stratified tissue. Apical surface are squamous, but basal layer can have cuboidal cell or columnar cell. So if you look at this diagram here, very nice diagrams that you see, well, those are simple cuboidal, and then we have flat cells. But you're only looking at the top, at the apical surface, and if those top cells are flat, then it's squamous, right? And the function of stratified epithelium is protection. And it's your skin, upper part of your skin, and also epithelium in your oral cavity, in your mouth, in your vagina, right, in a anus, somewhere where you can have abrasion and where you need to protect underlying tissues. Abrasion or abrasion? Abrasion. So this is a histological slide of stratified squamous, and it begins where we have this darker pink stuff all the way up. So this is, you know, many layers. So I would say no less than 100 layers shown over here. And let me see if it says, yeah, so I want to mention here that when we're talking about stratified squamous, it can be keratinized or non-keratinized. Keratinized means you have a layer of dead cells on a surface, and this would be epidermis of your skin, or it can be non-keratinized, like epithelium covering your oral cavity. This one, all cells are alive. But we will talk about stratified squamous keratinized more when we cover skin. Next, epithelium that is not that common. I just want to move myself away. And the first is stratified cuboidal and a columnar here. It just says it's uncommon, and it's mostly glands and ducts of the glands. So over here, for example, is sweat gland, and it's stratified cuboidal. Epithelium over here, stratified columnar. You would find in some ducts, like bigger tubes in your body. But again, this is not very common epithelium. And if we have it, it's usually only 2 layers of cells. There is another interesting epithelium that is a part of stratified epithelium that is called transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium can change its shape. So here's the picture here, cartoon picture that represents it. So you do have several layers, but this is the epithelium that has ability to stretch a lot. And when it stretches, it might look like stratified squamous. When it recoils back, it can look like stratified columnar or cuboidal. All right, but this epithelium found in a urinary system. So it's in a urinary bladder and in a ureters. That's pretty much the only location for transitional epithelium. I think some parts of the uterus might have it as well, but the location, like example of organs where you can find it, will be urinary bladder. When empty bladder, when the bladder is empty, then it will be kind of cuboidal apical cells. When it's a full bladder, that apical surface will be squamous cells, right? So here see on histological slide. So it really looks like stratified cuboidal, right? But because we don't have really a stratified cuboidal that has more than 2 layers, it cannot be stratified cuboidal, then it will be transitional. But if it was my first time and I would look at this epithelium, either here or here, I would definitely confuse it with stratified cuboidal, right? But having this knowledge that no, stratified cuboidal, you will not find like 15, 20 layers of cuboidal cells. So no, that's gonna be transitional. Okay, so here is the summary, right? So let's see what we know. Simple squamous, right? Simple cuboidal, simple columnar, pseudo-stratified columnar, stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, and transitional epithelium. So make sure you read this location and functions, right? Because I already talked about it. I don't want to repeat myself. Otherwise, this lecture gonna be extremely long, and nobody want a really long lecture. So please, when you're watching, pause and read location and function. And so the epithelium we talk about was covering epithelium. We also have glandular epithelium, and it's made of cells modified to make and secrete substances. And glandular epithelium makes your glands. And you have endocrine glands and exocrine glands. And the difference between them is that exocrine glands, they secrete through the duct. So if you look at this picture here, they're, kind of nice. So for example, this is the gland over here, right? And then it secretes, it can be a surface of your body, or it can be, for example, inside your digestive tract, but secretion leaves the glands, go to the duct, and then whatever the destination is, either a surface of the body or cavity. Right, so that would be exocrine gland. Endocrine glands are not shown on this diagram. We will cover endocrine glands when we talk about endocrine system, but endocrine glands, they will secrete their product without use of duct, and they will secrete it into your blood or your lymph. That will be endocrine glands. So no duct for endocrine and duct for exocrine. So you can see here different type of exocrine glands, but all of them have duct. Now we will get to this in a second. But when you classify different glands, you're looking at the gland structure. For example, this is alveolar because the gland looks like a sac. And this is tubular because the gland looks like a tube. And then you see if it's simple, it has one duct, right? Or it's compound, because this one, for example, has 3 ducts coming to 1 duct, right? So it can be compound. So if you look at the name, simple alveolar, telling you 1 duct, and the gland look like a sac. Simple tubular, 1 duct, and gland look like a tube. And then we have all the varieties: simple coiled tubular, simple branch tubular, simple branch alveolar, right? So you see alveoli kind of branch, tubules are branch, but it still has 1 duct. Or we have compound alveolar, compound tubular, alveolar, or compound tubular. So there's all different of morphology of exocrine glands. So those are all exocrine. And how do I know they're exocrine? Because they all have ducts, right, over here. So again, take a minute, pause the video, and look at structure of these exocrine glands and compare their structure with their names. Oh, and here we have this method of secretion actually for exocrine glands. So they secrete inside the duct, but what happened before, right? So let's go back. So these cells, like a pink cells, so their product will be synthesized inside those cells. So how the product from inside the cells will go inside the duct? That's what our method of secretion. So we can have merocrine glands, most common, apocrine glands, and holocrine glands. So merocrine glands shown right here, and secretion will be through secretory vesicles. So you see the product is synthesized on the raphe, then moves to Golgi. Now from Golgi inside the vesicles, it will move to the surface of a cell. The vesicle will fuse with the plasma membrane, and secretion will be released by exocytosis. So we have vesicle, we have exocytosis. An example would be eccrine sweat glands, right? This is the glands that allow you to regulate your body temperature, right? This is when you sweat, like when it's hot and you pretty much all cover with sweat, that's your eccrine sweat glands. Apocrine, the method of secretion is this one. So what happened, the product is synthesized in the raphe, right, moves to the Golgi, and then you secrete the product along with part of the cell, along with the cytoplasm. So it's pinched off portion of cell is in the secretion. So it's not only, whatever product you produce, it's also part of the cell. So secretion accumulates near apical portion of the cell, and then it's pinched off. And this is also your sweat glands, but it's your apocrine sweat glands, and they found in axillary and genital region, and this is what give you body odor, right? And holocrine glands, secretion is shown right here. This is actually when the whole cell dies and become excretory product. So it's a destruction of cell. An example would be your sebaceous oil glands. So oil glands, you know, the oil gland cells gives up its own life to secrete oil for you. So again, merocrine, apocrine, holocrine type of secretion. And also apocrine secretion is the secretion of milk in mammals and in humans. So when you breastfeed your baby, you not only produce that milk, but the baby get part of the cytoplasm of those cells that synthesize milk proteins, right? Okay, that's it for epithelial tissue. Did we cover everything? Obviously not. So much to talk about, right? But that kind of, I think, a good introduction. And if you are in my class, face-to-face class, if you have led together, we will talk more about it in class. So next type of tissue is connective tissue. So all connective tissue has common embryonic origin. It comes from mesoderm, then became mesenchyme. Of course, there is so many different functions for connective tissue because we have different types of connective tissue. It's a support, it's a movement of materials, it's protection as well. So very huge variety of functions. We will talk about individual types and their functions. And here you can see classification. So connective tissue can be divided into connective tissue proper, supporting connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue. And there is two types of connective tissue proper, loose and dense. There is two types of supporting connective tissue, cartilage and bone, and two types of fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph. So you already see, wow, that's so different. My blood and my, let's say, bone, they all connective tissue, right? So let's look at the different type of connective tissue. So here, connective tissue proper. I'm reminding you, it can be loose or dense, but connective tissue proper has different type of cells and fibers. Fibers are extracellular proteins, so proteins that are not inside but outside a cell, and it also has ground substances, and those are chemicals around the cells, not inside the cells. So what cell types? For example, we can have fibroblast, fibrocytes, adipocyte, mesenchymal cells. Those are embryonic cells. There is three types of fibers: collagen fiber, elastic fiber, and reticular fiber. And as I told you, ground substance. So if you look at this cartoon diagram, you have, pretty good representation of connective tissue. So you have cells. So for example, this is a cell, adipocyte over here, macrophage, this cell over here, fibroblast. Fibroblast will be the cells that synthesize all these fibers and ground substance that is between. So you can see now cells are not that close to each other. So here's one cell, here's another cell, here's another cell. And what is between the cells, we call extracellular matrix. And extracellular matrix is made of these fibers and ground substance. So you can see it shown here, collagen fibers, these bigger ones, elastic fibers, this green fibers over here, and reticular fibers, short and highly branched reticular fibers right there. And all this kind of beige part around is a ground substance. So here's our loose connective tissue. We have three types of loose connective tissue: adipose tissue, areolar tissue, and reticular tissue. So here, let's gonna start with this right in the middle. This is areolar connective tissue. The one on the top is a reticular tissue, and the one on the bottom is adipose. So adipose tissue has adipocytes. Cells are called adipocytes, and they are modified for fat storage, energy storage, insulation, and we have white and brown adipose tissue. So brown adipose tissue is mostly for energy storage and found in young kids and young adults. When we get older, we have this white adipose tissue that, really kind of like when we have our extra pounds, that's because of this white adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue, it's really, you can burn it with a huge release of heat. So, so you metabolize brown adipose tissue way better and faster and more efficient compared to white adipose tissue. Now, areolar tissue, that's in the middle, fills spaces between muscle fibers, surrounds blood vessels, supports organs. And reticular tissue over here also supports your organs. Reticular tissue also, it's a basic tissue for your lymphatic tissue. But that's our loose connective tissue. And the name loose is gonna tell you that those fibers, they're not packed tightly. Right, so you see how we have fibers and a lot of spaces in between them, and even in reticular. In adipose, it seems like cells are close to each other, but that's because cells just get bigger because of a lot of fat, triglycerides stored inside those vacuoles. And we have dense connective tissue. So dense connective tissue already tells you that those fibers are tightly packed, more tightly. And dense connective tissue can be divided into dense regular and dense irregular. And in dense regular, you see over here on the top diagram and histology slide, fibers are parallel to each other. Right over here, you see this pink lines, those are collagen fibers. In between, we have cells, fibroblasts, that synthesize those fibers. And you would find this tissue in the ligaments and tendons. Ligaments connect one bone to another bone, and tendons connect muscles to your bones. And we have dense irregular shown over here, and then those collagen fibers, they are in a random direction. And this will give you a greater strength in all directions. So you can pull it into all different directions, and it's still, pretty strong tissue. And you would find this tissue under epidermis of your skin. So you have epidermis, that is epithelial tissue, and then under you have dermis, that's shown over here. So it's a dermis of your skin, dense irregular connective tissue. Okay, now supporting connective tissue. So supporting connective tissue, I'm trying to move myself around again, will include cartilage and bones, right? So here we're looking at cartilage. So the cells are chondrocytes. Cells are located inside the special structures that's called lacunae. So lacunae are like a little pockets of fluid that surround those chondrocytes. And the main type of cartilage are hyaline cartilage, fibro cartilage, and elastic cartilage. And hyaline cartilage is the most common, shown here on the top. And this is, for example, this part of your nose is the hyaline cartilage. Your ribs are attached to the sternum through the hyaline cartilage. When you have connection between your bones, you have hyaline cartilage. Fibro cartilage will have more collagen fibers, make it really very durable, very strong tissue. And fibro cartilage you will find in your vertebral column between two vertebrae. It's called intervertebral disc, so part of the intervertebral disc. And then where your pelvis come together, there is a cartilage in between two pubices. It's called pubic symphysis. That's a fibro cartilage. Not that common. Elastic cartilage, pretty much you only have two locations. It's the pinna of your ear. So that's ear, that's your elastic cartilage. And another place you would find it will be epiglottis, the ones that cover your trachea when you swallow food. So the food wouldn't go to your trachea, it would go to esophagus. So it's called epiglottis. So most common is hyaline cartilage. You do another two types. You do have fibro cartilage, elastic cartilage. Connective tissue, supportive connective tissue bone is another type of tissue. And here you can see structure of a bone, right? Cells include osteoblast, osteoclast, osteocytes, and function is protection, support, and also a movement as well. And osteon is a functional and structural unit of a bone. And again, take a minute and look at this diagram over here, and it show you the osteons over here. So this this circles right here and here. They're not circles, they're like tubes, right? Go through your whole bone. That's what's called osteon. Inside each osteon, we have what we call central canal. And in this central canal, you will have blood vessels and nerves. Then these dots around are osteocytes, the cells, and osteocytes located within lacunae as well. And this rings, like ring-looking structure, is called lamellae or lamella. And then you see like this, hair-looking structure, this is called canaliculi, right? So we have over here lamellae, concentric circles. Harvasian canal, it's an old name. Now it's called central canal. And now these lines that go from central canal to the edge of osteon are called canaliculi. And as I said, the cells itself, osteocytes, are located within lacunae. And then on the surface of this osteon, we will have osteoclast and we will have osteoblast cells. And osteoblast, they synthesize the matrix of your bone, and osteoclast, they dissolve the bone. And they kind of like in a harmony, right? You constantly synthesize new bone, you dissolve an old bone, and then osteocytes are mature cells that maintain your bones. Fluid connective tissue include blood and lymph. We will talk about lymph when we cover lymphatic system, but blood, as any connective tissue, is made of cells, right? And extracellular matrix over here that we call plasma. And in the blood, the main cells we have are erythrocytes or red blood cells, and we have fewer number of lymphocytes or white blood cells. And lymph, it giving what is lymph? We will talk about it later. And again, because I cannot cover everything in one lecture, but believe me, if you're taking this class, you will learn the difference between blood and lymph. But right now, we just want to mention that both blood and lymph are type of fluid connective tissue, and the function of both pretty much is transport, main function. But then we have lots of other functions as well, but we cover cardiovascular and lymphatic system, and we talk about it in details. Okay, so very quick recall. We're almost done with this lecture. So when we go to our connective tissue now, so let me see, right there. Right, so remember we have connective tissue proper, loose and dense. And loose, we have areolar, adipose, and reticular. And dense, we cover dense regular, dense irregular. There is another one that is elastic, but not covered in this lecture. So dense regular, dense irregular, that's our connective tissue proper. Then we talk about cartilage, right? Hyaline, fibrocartilage, elastic cartilage. We mentioned bone and fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph. And now we are in muscle tissue, right here. Now we will talk a lot about muscle tissue in the muscular system, but right now we just want to say that muscle tissue includes skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, cardiac muscles. And here's the histology slide of all three: skeletal on the top, smooth in the middle, and cardiac on the bottom. So skeletal muscle, multinucleated. One cell has many nuclei. Function is movement and facial expression. So it's movement of your skin. And it's a voluntary, it's just voluntary versus involuntary. So skeletal muscles are voluntary. That means you can control its movement. So if you move parts of your body, you control this movement of skeletal muscles, and it's a voluntary tissue, right? Smooth muscles have a single nucleus, not multi, uninucleated. Smooth muscles are involuntary. You cannot control their contraction and relaxation. And function is movements in internal organs. So you would find smooth muscles inside the walls of your hollow internal organs, like your stomach, like your urinary bladder, like uterus, right? So, and many others, like all your GI tract, even your blood vessels. The walls of blood vessels have smooth muscles. Cardiac muscles you will find only in the heart. And cells are uninucleated, so single nucleus. They are involuntary, so you cannot control them. And interesting characteristic of cardiac muscles are intercalated discs. And intercalated discs are actually junctions between cells that allow electrical signal to move very rapidly between cells. So that's found in cardiac muscles. And the last tissue is nervous tissue. And it's excitable. It receives signals and it can send them along, your neurons to your central nervous system, or from your central nervous system to your muscles, for example. So it sends and receives information. And the major cells are obviously neurons. Those are functioning cells. And neuroglia are cells that support your neurons. So they have many important functions. They, for example, make the framework for neurons. So neurons are inside this nice, they kind of like they surrounding by neuroglia, right? So they can nourish your neurons. They can help your neurons to heal. They can neuroglia can form a barrier between your nervous tissue and your blood. Some neuroglia produce myelin, and myelin covers axons. It's like a fatty structure that covers axons and allow electrical signal to move very rapidly and fast, right? But that's a function of neuroglia. Here, as I give you like astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, Schwann cells, those are examples of neuroglial cells. And myelin is a covering of the axon, like shown over here, like this purple structure. And this is the basics, right? So we will talk way more about it when we get to the nervous system. Okay, and what is next? Okay, so now, hold on. Oh, I forgot to, excuse me for a second. I'm gonna plug in my computer. Yeah, otherwise my computer gonna die. So let's do a very quick recall. And again, that's gonna be very quick recall. So we're covering tissue here, and we just and we said at the very beginning that we have 4 major types: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. Now, epithelial tissue, we cover most of it, and when we get to the skin, we will talk more about stratified, squamous, keratinized. Connective tissue, when we talk about skeletal system, we will go back to the structure of the bone. When we cover muscular system, we will go back to structure and histology and morphology of muscle tissue. And we cover nervous system, we will talk way more about nervous system. But this is the basics, this is introduction. Of course, rewatch this video and read all these slides again. So now, if you are in my anatomy class, that's all you need to know. You can stop watching video right here. But if you are in anatomy and physiology class, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more slides to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. So tissue healing. So over here, it's give you 4 phases of wound healing. So the phase number 1, that is starts immediately after you have, for example, you have a cut in your arm, right? Or you have another damage, another wound. So it's pretty much start immediately with hemostasis or stop of the bleeding. Then we have inflammation phase, day 3 to day 20, and again depends on a severity or how severe is the wound, and this is where we form kind of framework for blood vessels growth. Phase 3 would be proliferation or granulation, and this is where the special tissue is formed, called the granular tissue. And then remodeling or maturation, it's a final step, right? So we stop bleeding, then we prepare framework for blood vessel growth, because if you have a wound, you cut yourself, you definitely damage your blood vessels. That's why you have bleeding. That's why you need to stop bleeding. And you need these blood vessels to grow back. Then proliferation, granulation kind of pulls the wound together, and then it will remodel your tissue. So hopefully you will not end up with a scar tissue. You will end up with the same epithelial tissue. If, you know, scar tissue can be under the epithelial tissue, but we want to remodel it the best way your body can. And inflammation, phase number 2, has these cardinal signs. Inflammation always include redness, swelling, pain, heat, and sometimes loss of function. So now let's look at these phases in a more detail. So here you have a wound, and what is damage here? It's not very deep wound, but you damage epithelium, epithelial tissue and connective tissue. So you're damaging your skin pretty much. And because this part of your skin that is connective tissue, very vascular, you break your blood vessels and you start bleeding, right? So bleeding occurs at the site of injury immediately after the injury. And mast cells in the region trigger an inflammatory response. So in the dermis of your skin, you have a mast cells that are part of your defense mechanism. Those are your white blood cells, mast cells. And mast cells plus cells that were damaged, they start sending chemical signals. And those chemical signals, what we call inflammatory signals, they will start inflammation. So bleeding and inflammation. After several hours, a scab has formed. So you see this scab, that is pretty much your coagulated blood. And cells of the stratum germinativum, that is actually these like cells on the very bottom of epithelium, those cells are migrating along the edges of the wound. So you see how cells, epithelial cells are migrating down. Then phagocytes, they remove a debris, right? So you will have pieces of, fibers and, some other stuff that happen, right? Because of, you kill yourself, you damage yourself, right? Your cells. So the phagocytic cells over here, macrophages, they removing debris, and more of these cells are arriving with the enhanced circulation in the area. So we have more macrophages, we have more fibroblasts migrating in the area. Clotting around the edges of the affected area partially isolates the region, right? So you have clotting, the blood clotting, right? You don't want, if you have any infection over here, right, you don't want it to migrate into your healthy tissues. Now, step 3, 1 week after the injury, the scab has been undermined by epidermal cells migrating over the meshwork produced by fibroblast activity. So you see these fibroblast cells, they start producing fibers. So like your collagen fibers, elastic fibers, reticular fibers, right? And these epidermal cells, they kind of migrating back to the top. This, you still have this scab over here, but then it will be disattached here, right? Phagocytic activity around the site has almost ended, and the fibrin clot is disintegrating. So that would be your fiber clot over here. After several weeks, the scab has been shed and epidermis is complete. A shallow depression marks the injury site, but fibroblasts in the dermis continue to create scar tissue that will gradually elevate the overlying epidermis. All right, so pretty much you're done. You have a completely healed epithelial tissue, because epithelial tissue heals really, really well. And under this epithelial tissue, you will have scar tissue. But then you have this remodeling process. And what remodeling process, it will get rid of this depression mark, right? And, hopefully you will have a nice skin without any scar tissue shown on the surface of your body. I think that's it. So let's very quickly review again. So when you have tissue damage, right, you have healing, and healing will include hemostasis, you stop bleeding, then inflammation, then it will be kind of like proliferation and granulation. This is this part, right? So you proliferate, you form, I wouldn't even say here, but yeah, this granulation tissue. So you will have this granulation tissue over here and scab on the top of it. And then you finish up with remodeling when you hopefully back to the tissues that you had originally had over here. Okay, so that's just a little introduction to wound healing. And I'm sorry if this lecture is too long. I don't know how to make it shorter. It's just so much material to cover. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope it was helpful. So in this video lecture, again, we covered the tissue level of organization. I'll see you next time.